Sometimes the most powerful words don't come from books, podcasts, or experts in fancy suits. Sometimes, they come from the quiet voice of someone who's lived through 9 decades of love, loss, laughter, and everything in between. This story starts on an ordinary afternoon in a little garden behind a nursing home in the countryside. I was visiting a friend, and as I sat outside, I struck up a conversation with a woman sitting on a bench, quietly watching the flowers sway in the breeze. She looked small in her chair, her hands folded gently on her lap, her silver hair perfectly brushed back, and her eyes, sharp as ever, glimmering with curiosity and mischief. She smiled and said, "You look like someone who wants to learn something. Sit down, I've got a few things most men your age still haven't figured out." Her name was Mrs. Elaine. She was 92. And the next hour would change the way I saw so many things about life, love, and being a man in this fast, modern world. Now, I can't give you her exact voice, nobody can replicate that, but what I can do is pass on the wisdom she gave me that day. And let me tell you, these aren't just pretty words. They're truths. Gentle, firm, and absolutely unforgettable. So, what was the first thing she said? Something that stopped me cold. She leaned forward and said, "Most men don't realize that women don't want to be fixed. They want to be felt." Let that sink in. She told me, "When I was married, my husband was a fixer. Good man. Strong, reliable. But when I cried, he brought me solutions. When I was scared, he offered logic. When I felt lost, he'd hand me a list of things to do. I know he meant well, but you know what I needed? I needed him to hold my hand and say, 'I'm here. I feel that too.' Not fix it. Just feel it with me." And you know what? She's absolutely right. We live in a world where men are taught to be doers. Solve the problem. Provide the answer. Be the rock. But sometimes, strength looks like sitting in silence next to someone and letting them cry without trying to wipe away every tear. Elaine told me, "You want to be a strong man? Learn how to be soft when it counts. Not weak." So, there's a difference. And that brings me to the second truth she shared. She called it the mirror rule. She said, how a man treats the people closest to him is the truest reflection of who he is. Not how he treats his boss. Not how he acts in public. The real him shows up behind closed doors. That one hit hard. Elaine told me stories of couples she'd watched grow old together, some falling deeper in love, others growing bitter and cold. And in every case, the turning point wasn't some big event. It was the daily patterns, the small kindnesses or the quiet cruelties. The way a man says good morning, whether he listens without interrupting, whether he still notices the details, like her favorite flower or the way she sighs when she's tired. She said, "It's easy to impress strangers. But can you impress your wife at breakfast on a rainy Tuesday after 40 years of marriage? That's the measure." It reminded me how important consistency is. Not perfection, not grand gestures, but presence. Gentle, steady, real presence. And then came the third truth. I wasn't ready for it. Elaine looked at me, tilted her head, and said, "You know what breaks most men's hearts when they're old? It's not money. It's not failure. It's regret." She continued, "I've seen proud men cry in their last years, not because they didn't get rich, but because they didn't say, 'I'm sorry,' enough. Because they didn't tell their children they were proud of them. Because they waited too long to forgive or to ask for forgiveness." You could feel the weight in her words. She wasn't trying to scare me. She was trying to wake me up. And maybe that's what this video is for, to wake someone up who needs to hear it. She said, "Say what matters while it still matters. Say, 'I love you.' Say, 'Thank you.' Say, 'I was wrong.' You don't need to be perfect. Just don't wait." The silence after that was long, but not awkward. Just honest. Elaine gave me more advice that day. 6 simple, powerful truths I'll never forget. But for now, let's pause here. We've touched on 3 of them. Don't try to fix everything. Learn to feel with people. The way you treat your loved ones reflects your true character. If you want peace in your later years, don't let regret take root. And the way she said all of it, it wasn't preachy. It wasn't like she was lecturing. It was more like a grandmother sharing secrets that she wished someone had told her son or grandson. In the next part, we'll dive into the final 3 pieces of advice from this wise 92-year-old woman. One of them changed the way I think about aging entirely, and another might just help you sleep better at night. But for now, take a breath. Think about what Elaine said. Maybe there's someone you need to call, or hug, or just sit next to quietly without fixing anything at all. Because sometimes, wisdom doesn't shout. It whispers. When I asked Elaine what made her start thinking about these things, she didn't hesitate. She looked up at the sky and said, "You know, when you've outlived your parents, your husband, your closest friends, what you're left with are the echoes of things you said, things you didn't say, moments you shared, moments you let slip away." And then she laughed, a soft, wise laugh. "But I'm not here to make you sad. I'm here to make you pay attention. That's the gift I can still give." So, let's keep unwrapping that gift, shall we? The 4th truth Elaine shared might just be the one that surprises most men. She said, "Strength isn't about how loud your voice is. It's about how gentle your hands are when someone you love is breaking." We're taught that strength means being in control, never crying, always knowing what to do. But Elaine looked me right in the eye and said, "Real strength is when a man knows how to hold space for someone else's storm without trying to quiet it, or fix it, or run from it." She talked about her late husband again, with tenderness in her voice. He wasn't perfect. Far from it. But you know what made me love him more each year? He never tried to outshine my sadness. He sat with me in it. That's something only a truly strong man can do. Can we just pause there? Because that's powerful. So many men are terrified of being vulnerable. They see emotion as weakness, especially someone else's. But what Elaine said flipped that idea upside down. She made me realize, being a safe place for someone else doesn't make you soft, it makes you solid, reliable, trusted. And those are the men people remember when they're gone. Then she leaned in, smiling like she was about to tell me a secret. "You ready for the next one?" she said. Of course I was. "And that brings us to truth number 5. She said, "Never go to bed with bitterness in your mouth. Always find a way to clear it out, even if the other person doesn't." I was confused at first, so I asked her what she meant. She said, "Bitterness is like poison you drink, hoping the other person will get sick." And men? Oh, men love to hold on to things. Grudges. Resentments. Arguments from 10 years ago. But let me tell you something, when you're 92 and you can't even remember what the fight was about, but you still feel it in your bones, that's when you realize how much damage it did. She shared that one of her sons hadn't spoken to his brother in years. Something about money. Something about pride. And now, she said, they're 2 old men who miss each other but are too stubborn to pick up the phone. She didn't say this out of judgment. She said it out of sadness. And wisdom. "If I could go back in time and whisper something to them when they were younger," she said, "I'd say this: don't let your pride write checks your heart can't cash later." That one hit me like a brick. Because how many of us, especially men, let pride hold the steering wheel for way too long? How many of us go to bed angry, thinking time will sort it out? But time doesn't fix things. People do. With words. With humility. With that one brave phone call. Now, you might be thinking, this is all good advice, sure. But where's the part about living longer or being happier? That's where her final piece of advice comes in. The 6th and last truth she gave me that day. And this one, my friend, is a game changer. She said, "If you want to live longer, love longer." I blinked. She nodded. Sounds silly, I know. But listen, I've seen the difference. The men who lived the longest weren't the ones with the strict diets or the perfect gym routines. They were the ones who had someone to love and let themselves be loved in return. Let me say that again, because it deserves to echo. The men who lived the longest weren't just healthy. They were connected. Elaine told me about her friend Harold, who never married, lived alone, kept to himself. He was kind, but he never let anyone in. And when he passed, it was quiet. Too quiet. Then she smiled and said, "Now my Henry, he had friends coming over every weekend. He told me he loved me every night, even when we argued. He played cards with his grandkids, He held people close, even when life tried to pull them away. And he made it to 95. Science backs this up, by the way. Studies show that deep, meaningful relationships, friendships, family bonds, romantic love, are one of the strongest predictors of longevity and mental clarity in old age. Elaine said, "Don't wait till you're old to learn how to be loved. It's a skill, just like anything else." So there it was, the full set of truths, laid out so gently, so firmly, I could hardly believe how much weight each one carried. Let's quickly recap the ones we've now heard. Strength is shown in your gentleness, not your volume. Bitterness is poison. Spit it out before sleep. To live long, love long. Stay connected, open your heart, and let people in. After she finished, Elaine just leaned back and looked at the sky again, like she hadn't just handed me 6 treasures that could change someone's life. And I asked her one last question, "Why tell me all of this today?" She grinned and said, "Because I don't want it all to die with me. What's the point of living 92 years if I don't pass on the good stuff?" She's right. What good is wisdom if we don't share it? In part 3, we'll bring all of this together, how these truths apply not just to individuals, but to how we treat our families, raise our sons, and build our communities. We'll also hear how Elaine says she would live differently if she had one more shot, and what she believes every man should teach the next generation before it's too late. After Elaine finished sharing her 6 truths, the kind of advice you don't find in books or seminars, but in real, lived experience, I sat there quietly for a while. I wasn't ready to leave. She had this calm, knowing energy about her. The kind that makes you feel like time slows down around her. And so I asked one more question. One that had been on my mind from the very beginning. If you could go back and do it all over again, what would you do differently? Elaine smiled gently. Not much, she said. But the little things matter more than people think. I would have kissed my husband more. I would have danced barefoot in the living room more often, even when no music was playing. I would have laughed louder. I would have cried sooner. And I wouldn't have waited until my 60s to finally stop caring what other people thought. She paused, then looked me square in the eye. And I would have apologized faster. Especially to my kids. That struck a nerve. She explained that, like many parents, she had moments when pride got in the way. Times when she was too focused on being right, or being respected, that she forgot how much children, young or grown, just want to feel seen. Understood. Loved without a condition attached. She said, men, especially, don't realize how powerful a father's apology can be. Or a husband's. Or a grandfather's. It doesn't make you less of a man. It makes you more of one. At this point, I wasn't just listening with my ears. I was listening with my whole heart. Elaine continued, "You know what makes a man wise? It's not how much he knows, it's how much love he's willing to give. Without keeping score." That line. It hung in the air like a hymn. Give love without keeping score. She told me how in her community, many older men ended up isolated. Not because people stopped loving them, but because they had spent too long withholding love themselves. Stoic, proud, distant. And by the time they realized they wanted warmth, laughter, connection, their bridges had grown cold. Elaine said, "Tell men this. If you want someone to hold your hand when you're old, hold theirs now. If you want your grandchildren to call you, be the kind of grandfather who makes them feel safe and seen. If you want your wife to look at you with love in her eyes at 80, you better be watering that garden long before then." She called it emotional investment. And she was right. You don't get returns from a relationship you haven't fed with patience, honesty, and affection. That's not how it works. Love isn't a one-time act. It's a daily practice. Then she reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a little folded piece of paper. "I wrote this down when I turned 90, she said. "It's my version of a life philosophy. Just one sentence." She unfolded it slowly and handed it to me. "Live so that the people who know you best are the ones who love you the most." I read it 3 times before looking up. She nodded, satisfied. It's easy to be admired by strangers. It's harder, and far more important, to be respected by your spouse, trusted by your children, missed by your friends when you leave the room. That one hit deep. Too often, men chase admiration outside the home. Respect from colleagues. Accomplishments, trophies, attention. But none of it matters if the people closest to you feel neglected, unseen, or unloved. So, let's bring all of this home. Elaine's wisdom wasn't flashy. It wasn't complicated. It was rooted in everyday truths we often forget. That emotional presence matters more than physical strength. That a quiet apology is more powerful than a loud defense. That bitterness robs years off your life, and love adds them back. That small acts of care shape the biggest memories. That forgiveness is a form of freedom. That being deeply loved and deeply loving others is the greatest legacy a man can leave behind. She didn't talk about money, or status, or fame. She talked about being a good human, a kind man, a wholehearted presence in the lives of those you love. And as our time together ended, I asked her if she had any advice specifically for the next generation of men, sons, grandsons, even young fathers just figuring things out. Her answer was simple. Teach them that it's okay to feel. That kindness isn't weakness. That silence can be strength, but not when it replaces connection. Tell them it's okay to not have all the answers as long as they're asking the right questions. And remind them that love, real love, is not something you fall into. It's something you choose every day. Before I left, she said one last thing. A man is only as old as the love he gives. And you know what? She didn't seem 92 to me. She felt timeless. Like someone who had lived fully, hurt deeply, and still chose to meet the world with grace. So, to all the men watching this, whether you're 30 or 70 or 90, this is your sign. Don't wait until it's too late to become the kind of man people feel lucky to have known. You've still got time. You've still got breath in your lungs and people who care. Start showing up for them, today. And if this conversation touched you, don't just hit like or subscribe, pass it on. Call your dad. Hug your son. Write a letter. Forgive someone. Say, I love you. Say, I'm proud of you. Say, I'm here. Because one day, someone might sit on a bench like Elaine did, remembering the way you made them feel. And that's the kind of legacy that never dies.